Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2. And yeah, I know this is actually more of a professional video for this channel. Normally this channel is an all behind the scenes kind of casual channel, but I'm gonna put a nicer video up over here because I'm going to build out a Colt Mk18 Mod 0 upper receiver for this registered SBR lower receiver that you guys have seen before, that has the really awesome engraving from Crane, Indiana, and the Crane Naval Air Station where they built the Mk18 originally. And I'm trying to build a better clone correct Mk18 Mod 0. I had an LMT upper receiver on this. I was like, that's not right. I'm gonna put on a Colt 10.3 inch barrel on this upper to make it correct. So I bought all Colt and LMT parts that are clone correct, and we're gonna build it here on camera. But if you are coming over from the Texas Gun Vault, the main channel, this is the video where I'm going to assemble this on camera if you're interested and watch me fumble around with these parts. So I'm gonna show you how I do it and my personal preferences and build order. So let me adjust the camera now and let's get at it. Alright, so the first thing I always install on these upper receivers is the forward assist. I know not a lot of people like these, but they're just part of the AR-15. Not a lot of people use them or even know what they're for. But you got the forward assist, the spring, and the roll pin, which I've put here in a roll pin holder. And so I always start with the roll pin first. So let me grab my little rawhide hammer here. I'm not going to put it in all the way, but I always just start it. And I'm going to tell you, these roll pin holders are worth their weight in gold. All right, so I started the roll pin. It's right there. It's not in far enough that it will get in the way of installing the forward assist. So now I'll install the forward assist, and you got to push it in. You kind of have to hold it in and then tap in the roll pin the rest of the way. And then it should hold after a certain time, and there it is. And then once it's in, you can finish it with a regular roll pin punch, which of course I have misplaced. Here it is. And this should finish it. And there we go. So now the forward assist is installed. So now we have to get the dust cover installed, which is going to require what I think is the hardest part of this entire build today. You have the rod that goes through the dust cover. I'm sure it has a name. And the hardest part to install is going to be this little spring right here. I have always had struggles with this, so I may have to cut away a couple times to make this work. It's really easy to see how it functions. It's just getting this little tiny portion of the spring to catch on the dust cover and still be able to install the rod all the way. It's just a little bit tricky. So I'll put the dust cover up first and start it halfway through. So there's that. And I hope this is coming across on camera. And then here comes the difficult part. So let's see if we can get this to work. See if I can hold this in place. And magically, I think I got it on the first try. If that's the case, I am really proud of myself. And I did. Look at that. And it works. Awesome. Okay, so now I got the upper parts kit installed, or the upper parts, and it seems to be working just fine. I know that when I install these dust covers the first time, you kind of have to work them in a little bit so they kind of break in, and then they'll be easier to maneuver. But there it is. I am really, really proud of myself on that one. Maybe I'm just getting better at this. But there you go, I caught it on camera first time. Yay. All right, so now I'm going to install the Delta ring on the barrel. All right, so the next thing we need to install is the Delta ring. the weld spring and the snap ring for the delta ring onto the barrel nut. So install the delta ring with the more narrow part towards the gun. Now, one of the tips I always tell people is because you're going to have to align the gas tube through this little hole right here. There's going to be a corresponding gap in the weld spring. You want to try to get that as close as possible. You can move it after you've installed it. It just makes installing the gas tube later a little bit easier the closer those two are. So you want to install the delta ring first, then the weld spring will go over it. I gotta make sure that's aligned. And there's that. And then you're going to need a pair of snap ring pliers. And this one is reversible, so I can have it either when I close it, it opens up or closes. So depending on which one of the attachment points I use. So right now I have it where I squeeze it and it will open up a snap ring. And this should be relatively pretty easy. And you want to make sure that this gap as well is going to correspond to where the gas tube will go through. So as long as you're pretty close on this portion of the installation, you're usually pretty good. As I said, you can move it later. It just saves time. Let me see if I can get it all the way on and on camera, and I think I got it. I did. So now that delta ring is on the barrel nut. Easy peasy. Well, for me, I've done this a few times, and I'm sure some of the more experienced builders, it's easy for them too. But if you're doing this for the first time, that can be a little bit tricky. So that went on just like it should. So now let's install the barrel. All right, so the next part of this install, when it comes to the barrel going into the upper receiver, you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need an AR-15 barrel nut wrench. And I also recommend that you have a little bit of high temp bearing grease to put on the threads, because in the future, if you ever want to get this barrel back off, especially if it's a long time from now, this bearing grease will go a long way in allowing you to break it free without damaging the upper receiver. So I'm going to start here by taking a little Q-tip. You don't have to put too much. I get a little bit of this high temp disc brake wheel bearing grease, and I put it right here on the threads. You don't got to put too much, just enough to get it in there, and the high temp obviously will resist the extreme high temperatures of the 5.56 and rifles in general. And that's really all that you need there. Some people might put on a little bit more than what I do, but that's all I put on. Then I will install the barrel. Make sure the lug is lined up where it goes into the threads, and then I will hand tight the barrel nut onto the threads, and eventually it will get to a point where I'll begin to turn the delta ring, and that's when you're going to need the wrench. So that's about as far as I can go with that. So now I'm going to need the barrel wrench here, and these teeth of course are going to correspond with the teeth on the barrel nut. Now I know some people use a torque wrench here. I believe the specifications say anywhere between 35 and 70 pounds. And I like to go right in the middle. Now I don't have a torque wrench on me, but I've done this enough. I kind of know how tight it needs to go. You don't want to over tighten it, and you also don't want it to be too loose. You'll kind of know, especially if you've done this before, but in the past when I've kind of hand done this, I've always gotten it between about 40 and 50 pounds. So I'm gonna hand tighten this. I just kind of know how tight it has to be, and you also have to be aware of aligning the teeth with the gas tube port. That's gonna be really important, because sometimes you're gonna have to go a little bit tighter than you want to make that aligned, and sometimes you have to go a little bit looser. So this is where I think using the torque wrench isn't as useful, because sometimes you have to do that micro adjustment at the very end. So here we go. I will tighten this down, get those teeth in there, pull the delta ring back. It should lock in. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty tight right there. And let me check for alignment. All right, so it looks like I'm going to have to back it off a little bit, because I don't think I can tighten it to make it lined. So let me back this off a little bit. Okay, so that's too loose. This is the fun thing about using delta rings. And let's see here. Let's see if I can tighten it up. Maybe not as much this time. See where the alignment is. That might work. I'll have to double check. So the way that I always check is to get the gas tube and see if I can get it aligned. So let me go and grab that now. All right, so if you remember, I said to keep everything aligned when it comes to the snap ring and the weld spring and the hole in the front. This is why. So you got to move this around. So I just spent a moment getting all those aligned here at the top. Now to see if this is going to be close enough to go in, I have the gas tube. And we're going to see if I can get it aligned. This can be a little bit tricky. Okay, so there it goes. It's through the delta ring. And I think it is going to go into the receiver. So let's turn this around here. Got to get it around the A-pillar front sight, and there it goes. Okay, so we are now good to go. So let me adjust the gas tube now, and I'll put it in the A-pillar front sight. So one thing before I change the camera angle and pound in the roll pin for the gas tube, I do want to show that you want to make sure that the gas tube is under no pressure, that you can easily slide it in and out of the gas block and the receiver. This means that there's no pressure from the barrel nut, and it will ensure better reliability and that there's no stress on this gas tube as it gets hotter and as it interacts with the bolt carrier. All right, so now I am going to adjust the camera and put in the roll pin. All right, so now I got to put the roll pin through the gas tube. This is always pretty easy. Just got to line everything up. You can see it right there. I know it's not going to come across on camera, but it's very easy to line up. And I'm going to use a roll pin holder here again. Get all of this lined up. And this should be relatively easy. You just got to simply start it. And then I will finish it with the roll pin punch. And there it is. The gas tube is now set. All right, so now it's going to be time to put on the muzzle device. All right, so now we're going to install the Knight's Armament NT4 QD flash hider. Now, because this has to be clocked, meaning that this ridge in the bottom, which will help align the suppressor, needs to be directly at the bottom, they do provide you a shim kit. Now, you're not supposed to use a crush washer when it comes to any type of quick detach flash hider or muzzle device. So they give you a number of these shims here, and sometimes you'll be lucky when you put it on, it will actually clock correctly. They also provide you with a little bit of rock set. Now, I don't like to use these thread lockers. I've had issues with them in the past. I've never had a problem when these things are tightened down. I've never had them come off, never had any issues with them, and I don't like to have them semi-permanent to permanent because there might be a day I wish to change this out for something else. I do know that you can break the rock set, but I've actually had a barrel in the past I couldn't break, so I just tend to not use this. I will occasionally use the bearing grease again for these threads, so I'll go ahead and do that now. I just apply a little bit. As I said, it's just so I can get it off in the future if I ever decide to do so. Not really that much has to be used. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on and see how it clocks. Most likely I will have to adjust it. But let's see. Do I win the lottery this time? No, I don't. It's off to the side. So I'm going to have to get enough shims to bring it all the way around to about there. So what I always do is I start off with the smallest shim first, because you want to use as few shims as possible and see how much that affects it. And with the Knight's Armament shims, the more notches it has, the thinner it is. So here is the thinnest shim. Put that on there. This is probably not going to be enough. All right, so that got me almost to the top. So I'll probably go 2 sizes thicker. So let's take this one off here. Here would be the next thickest. Here would be the 3rd thickest. So let's try that one. Sometimes this is just a little bit of trial and error. Nope, that's still at the top. So I'm going to mess around here and see if I can figure out the shim that I need, and we'll be right back. Alright, so I think I found the right shim. It's the full-sized shim. It almost gets that ledge perfect at the bottom. So now I'm going to tighten it down with a wrench. You got to use a 3/4, and I have tape around the sides of the wrench here to prevent any marring of the barrel or the muzzle device. And sometimes you got to go at this a little bit weird angle because you have the bayonet lug here at the bottom, which will interfere with the wrench. Sometimes you just got to find that right angle. So let's see if I can get it on here. Maybe. It's a little bit tough on these Mk18s. All right, so here is the Knight's Armament rail system for the Mk18, and it goes on like a typical handguard for an AR-15, but it does have a little claw here in the back that goes underneath the barrel nut, so you got to make sure that you loosen this up all the way so it will fit underneath that barrel nut there. So let me install the top portion first, and you got to make sure you can pull the delta rings back, which I can. So let's put the front on first. Sometimes these can be a little bit of a very tight fit, like it is now. All right, so after a few minutes of totally not cursing and getting mad and throwing a temper tantrum, I got this rail system on. So there it is. Had to take off the top cover. Sometimes I can get them on there, sometimes I can't. That one just took a little bit more effort than normal. So now I got to put on this top rail that way from the back, and there we go. The bottom rail is often really easy to put on. Sometimes I'll do it off of the vise, but see here, I like to wipe this down first. But let's see here. It should go on relatively easy. All right, I was just kidding. It did not go on easy, but it did go on, and it is nice and solid. Now I'm just going to install the rear sight. Let me grab that real fast. This is the proper LMT sight for the Mod 0 Mk18s. So I believe that should be most of the exterior of the upper. So just so you guys know, everything's Colt except for the LMT rear sight, which is clone correct, and the Knight's Armament handguard, the Knight's Armament Flashhider, and the CQD sling swivel on the other side. And so now I'm going to get the bolt carrier and the bolt prep. Alright, so here is the Colt Bolt carrier, and I'm going to take it apart and see if it already has the extractor upgrade. If not, I do have the BCM Extractor Spring Upgrade Kit. And the reason the Mk18s needed this is on the shorter barrels, you needed a stronger extractor spring. So let me take out the bolt, and I will see if it already has it on it. See here. Man, it's been a while since I took one of this apart. There it is. Alright. Take out the cam pin. Here's the bolt. And let's take out the extractor. And it looks like it does not have it. So we're going to clean this off, get the BCM Extractor Upgrade out, and install it. Okay, so unpackage that. And so let's take out the old spring here. It comes out as a complete unit. You want to put in the detent. I'm not really sure what that thing's called though. Little spring tower there. Put in the spring, make sure it snaps into place. There should be like a little lip in there, and it should hold, and there it goes. And then you have the O-ring, which of course I just dropped, and that will go around the spring. And there you go. That is the extractor upgrade. Let me go ahead and wipe all of this off, and then I'll reinstall it on the bolt, and then the bolt on the bolt carrier. All right, so there it is. I'll wipe that down, put it back in to the carrier, line the cam pin, and then put in the firing pin and the cotter pin. And the whole carrier should be back together, and this is ready to go into the upper. So I'm going to wipe this down, put a little bit of oil on it, and we'll install it, and I think this should complete the Mk18 Mod Zero build. Alright, so I put a little bit of oil on the carrier, so now we're going to put in the correct PRI Gasbuster charging handle and the bolt with the extractor upgrade, and this upper should be complete and pretty darn clone correct. So let me get the lower receiver here. Now, as I said, this is a registered short-barreled rifle with the ATF. So this is completely legal to do, and there's that cool engraving. And so here we go. The birth of a more clone correct Colt Mk18 Mod Zero. So take a look at that. That looks absolutely fantastic. Well, there you go. So let me adjust the camera and I'll give you guys my final thoughts. All right, so there you go. The birth of a Mk18 Mod Zero clone that's more clone correct. I'm really happy with this. It's been bugging me a long time. I know I had that LMT upper and it looked great on it, but having a real Colt properly spec'd out upper receiver for this Mod Zero is awesome. This thing, while many people are not going to think it is as cool as the Mod 1, I think there's just a nostalgic look to the Mod Zero. It's just really cool. And now I have two very clone correct Mark 1s, and I'm very happy with that. So I'll take the other LMT stuff and build an LMT gun, a CQB gun with that one, and register another SBR. Man, the builds just never stop. So there you go. So if this is your first time here on the Texas Gun Vault 2, thank you for joining me. Hope this video didn't bore you too much. And if you just found this video, go over to my main channel, the Texas Gun Vault. I'll put a link to that in the description below, and I really appreciate it. So there you guys go. That have been fans of the Texas Gun Vault 2. A little more professional content over here instead of just behind the scenes, but I couldn't post this on the main channel. So let me know if you have any questions and what you think of this build. So as always, thanks for watching.